Hi, I'm Nigel, an engineer with over 30 years experience. Join me on my adventures as I build new, repair old and restore beauty. This is Bleeding Rust. Hello and welcome back to the workshop. So, I thought I'd do a series of videos where I show you some of the tricks of the trade that I've picked up over the 30 years that I've been an engineer. Some of them are in the book, they're what you might learn as an apprentice or in college, and some of them are not. These are things that have been passed on, as engineers pass on tricks through the generations. And so I'm going to show you 3 tips in this video, and once a month or maybe once every 5 or 6 weeks, I'll do one of these videos that show you some of the tricks of the trade that might make life easier for you when you're doing your projects. And the first one that I'm going to show you is how to sharpen twist drills. Now, some of you may have one of these machines, like I have one here. This is not mine. I've borrowed this just for the purpose of this video, just show you. And this is a machine for sharpening drills. It helps you get the drill bit in at the right angle and to grind a nice new cutting edge on. However, they do take quite a long time and they're a little bit slow. If you know how to do it, it's actually really, really easy. And there's only 3 different dimensions or angles that you need to be aware of. So I'm going to show you what I was shown as an apprentice by an old sweat of an engineer. He was in his 60s then. And I've sharpened drills like that ever since. And it is really easy and it takes seconds. Now I'm going to show you how to do it on a grinding wheel. I have my grinding wheel there. But another way of doing it is on an angle grinder. So I'm going to show you how the same technique can be used on an angle grinder. So if you're out on site, you don't have a grinding wheel, you don't have one of these fancy machines, but you do have your angle grinder. Maybe you've got a cordless angle grinder and a cordless drill, and you're still able to sharpen drills very quickly, very easily. And it works. It's really simple. So looking at this drill, I've got a big drill here. And the first thing you need to know is about this angle. So this is the point at the end of the drill, and that's called the point angle. On average, it's around about 59 degrees. That angle there is about 59 degrees, but it all depends on the drill bits that you have. That point angle will be set in order to give the maximum efficiency for the drill. So everyone's different. The beauty of this technique is you don't need to know what that angle is. You just need to know that it's there and to be aware of it. The next angle to be aware of is from the cutting edge. Now, each twist drill has 2 cutting edges. There's one, and then the next one is there. And that is what actually cuts the steel when it's twisting and drilling. As it turns, it cuts. Now, the angle of attack, so you imagine there's your cutting edge. This trailing edge here needs to trail off so that it's not rubbing against the remaining metal as you're cutting round. I'll put a visual up now, just a simple line drawing just to show you what I mean. But without that trailing edge, the cutting edge is not going to be able to cut. And the sharper that trailing edge is, or the angle of attack, the sharper that is, the more keen the drill will be. So it's about getting a balance, because if you have it too keen, the drill's going to snatch and it's going to dig in and stop and not enough, and it's just going to squeal, it's going to wear out very quickly, and it's not going to drill very efficiently. So that is the next angle that we need to be aware of. And the final one is more to be aware of once you're grinding, is the cutting edge. Now you see the cutting edge there. When you're grinding, you'll see this when we go to the grinding wheel, you want that horizontal like that, horizontal to the cutting wheel, not at an angle like that or an angle like that. You need to make sure that you're square on. So you need these 3 things in alignment. That horizontal, the angle sideways, and the angle down, which will all become evident when we go to the grinding wheel. So that's the angles that you need to be aware of. Okay, so I'm going to try and explain this as easily as I can. Now, with the drill coming in straight, so it's level that way, you can see now the point, and I'm square with the grinding stone, you can see the point angle of the drill. So obviously you don't want to grind it like that. You want to set the stone to the angle of your cutting edge, and then if I turn it over, that's going to be the same. Now you want them to be equal so that you get an equal cutting on each side. So the first thing you do before you turn your stone on is get your hand and steady this. I'll show you when I zoom out, and then set that angle there against the stone. And then you're going to match what the drill already is. So with that, and then you want the cutting edge not to be off at an angle like that, but to be flat. So the cutting edge is horizontal and it's at the same angle. So you've got the angle that way, the same as the stone, and the actual blade, the cutting edge itself is horizontal, not, if you can see that it's angled. I put some graphics on to help you. But so basically that's the first stage, okay? The next stage, once you've got your angle that way set, the next stage is to get the angle this way. Now that is going to set your attack angle for the drill bit. So you don't want it too sharp. Now if I remember, I said, I don't know, about 20 degrees, something like that. You just want to be off, and that is where you are. So you've got that angle set for that way. You've got it horizontal and you've dropped the back end down a bit. Once you've set it and you're right there, make sure that your hand is in a position where you can spin the drill in your fingers without changing any of those angles, okay? And once you've done this a few times, it will be second nature and really easy. So going off that front angle and setting this angle down a bit, that is as simple as all you need to do. Okay, so starting from the beginning, the important bits, first of all, get that angle first. That's your point angle by sitting it on the stone, setting it, getting it nice and flat, making sure that the cutting edge is horizontal, and then dropping the bottom end of the drill down to create that angle of around 20 degrees for the attack angle. And once you've set that, you're happy. So I'm going to keep my hand there like that. I'm already set. I'm going to turn on the wheel and it spin up. And I'm going to grind. I'm not going to turn the drill. Grinding it flat, and then I'm going to turn over and do the other side. Turn over. That side I go again. And that's it, we're done. I'll get it to zoom in on the drill bit. It's done, I've cut it. You might just be able to see the attack angle. It's very, very slightly pointing sort of up that way. The point angle's the same, hasn't changed because I set that on the drill. However, what if you're in a bind, you're on a boat? Most people will have a certain tool with them. You don't have your fancy grinding machine for sharpening drill bits with you, but you do have your angle grinder. You're on site, you've been drilling and cutting, you have your angle grinder. I'm going to show you a way that you can use your angle grinder with a grinding disc on, and it's better if you have a fresh grinding disc on to sharpen your bits in exactly the same way if you're in a bind. So, and it's almost as quick. So first of all, I've got my grinder. It's here, and I've set it up face up, got the guard on. I think by now people on my channel know how much I love guards on grinders and hate not having guards on grinders. This is a time when you definitely need the guard on the grinder. So I'm going to zoom in and show you what I do. So first of all, I'm going to make it safe. I'm going to lean on the grinder here. The button's there, and when I turn it on, it'll just keep the grinder steady. And then I'm going to put my hand here and just use the grinding stone to sharpen the drill. Now the principle is exactly the same. The angle you want for the drill, now bear in mind this stone now is that way and it goes that way round. So our grinding edge is basically there, and we want the grinding stone to grind against the edge of what we're doing, not that way around. So don't grind on this side because you'll put a burr on and it won't sharpen it. So you want to be there. So first of all, square onto the grinding stone. We set the angle and you can see it and feel it when it sits on the flat. So I've got the angle set now and I'm holding it. I'm using the guard to lean on so that I can't hurt myself. I'm nowhere near the actual grinding disc. So I've set the angle that way. Now square on this way. I now need to set my cutting angle at that 20 degrees. So once I've got the angle this way, turn around this way for that for the point angle. I then need to set the edge, so that's that way. So I've got those two angles. Now all I need to do, turn on the grinder. It says, and it does help if you plug it in. So I'm back now, I've plugged it in. So I've got my angle that way, got my angle that way, I'm ready to grind it. Just turn the grinder. Done. So that was how to sharpen twist drill bits with either a grinding wheel or on an angle grinder, and I hope you found that useful. If you notice a change in clothing during that video, that's because I've done this video in sections. So please, you know, if you want to put comments in in the comments that you noticed it, that's absolutely fine. But I hope you enjoyed that. So I want to move on now to my next tip. And the next tip that we're going to look at is called the 3-4-5 rule. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at is the 3-4-5 rule. And this is really, really useful technique for getting square lines off another line without the need for a big square like this. Let's say you haven't got a big square or you don't trust it. So let's imagine you're building a boat and you've got the sole of your boat there and you're putting in two adjoining walls or a frame for a door, could be anything. You've got this line here, which is one, and you want the next wall, and let's use this mark here as the next wall, to come off, but you want it to be exactly square from here. Now, if you have a big square, yes, of course, you could just line it up onto that line there, put it there, mark it down, you've got your square. But how do you do it if you haven't got a square? What do you do? Well, we use the 3-4-5 rule, and engineers use this all the time. So the first thing we need to do is we need to have our point where we want the square to come off from. So I'm going to zoom you in now and I'm going to show you where we mark the 3-4-5 to get our square. Okay, so we know that that is the mark now from this line that we want it to be square from. So the first thing we do is we measure the 3. Now that could be any 3. It could be 3 centimeters, it could be 3 inches, it could be 300, as long as it's 3. Now I'm going to go 300 because the longer it is, the more accurate it is. So from that mark, I'm going to measure, and it doesn't matter which way I measure, but if this is the main part of the line of what I want to go off, I want to go off from that. So I'm going to measure 300. That's our 3, and I'm going to put a mark. Now, after 3 is 4, I'm going to measure up 400 for the 4. Because I've done 300, I need to do 400. If you was doing 3 inches, you'd need to do 4 inches next, or 3 feet, 3 meters. It doesn't matter as long as it's 3, 4, 5. So, where that's 3 now, I'm going to measure 400 up. So that's the 4 in our 3-4-5. And I do quite a long line, and you'll see why. So that's just check, and I've got 400 from there to there. Now is where the magic comes in, because now we have the 5. So from our 300 mark here, we measure 500 and we measure it from there to where it intersects with our 4 line, which was there. You can see that it's intersecting there, and put across. So measuring again, just double checking. That's 500, just double checking our 400 is correct. And it is. That gives us our square mark. All we have to do then is using a straight edge, and I'm going to use the square. Imagine it wasn't a square. And from where that intersects, that cross, them 2 marks intersect, to the point where we want it to go square from, we can just draw a line. That is now square, and to show you and prove it, I'm going to put it on and line it up with that, and as you can see, it is perfectly square. So I've managed to draw a perfectly square line off there using just the tape measure and the 3-4-5 rule without using a square. The way that this works, for those that are interested, is what we've created. If I draw this line down here, and put that line in there, what we've created is a right-angled triangle. And the Pythagoras theorem is that the square of this side plus the square of this side equals the square of this side. So then all you need then is the square root of that. Now, 4 times 4 is 16. So that's 16, write that there. This was 3, and the square of 3, 3 times 3 is 9. Trying to write this upside down. 9 plus 16 is 25. So the 25 is here. The square root of 25 is 5. So what we end up is you know that the hypotenuse is 5. That's 3, that's 4, that's 5. That's why we use 3, 4, 5. It's also easy to remember. So as long as you always use a form of 3, 4, 5, whether that be millimeters, centimeters, meters, inches, it doesn't matter. As long as it's 3, 4, 5, you will always be able to find a square line of any other line. A really, really useful tool that engineers use all the time. Okay, so the next tip that I'm going to show you is how do you know if your square is square? If you buy a new square, and this one's a brand new one, really cheap set square from B&Q. I think Harbour Freight's equivalent to Harbour Freight, I think, in the US. How do you know if it's square? You're presuming it is. It says it is. It says it's a square, but how do you know? Well, there is a really easy, very fast, easy way to check if your square is actually square. Now, maybe you've got a decent one, you've dropped it, it's been thrown in the bottom of your toolbox, and you've got some important work to do, and you want to just double check if your square is square. So let me show you how. So here we have a piece of steel, and it's got a good edge on it. That's actually the edge that comes with it. When you buy it, it's not been cut, it's perfectly flat. And I'm going to use that edge to test if my square is actually square. So what all I have to do, first of all, is use it as a square, put it down, and actually put a line on, and mark a line on the steel, which you can see there. So now that I've got my mark on there, so I've marked it this way with my pencil. I'll just make that a bit easier to see. And all you have to do to check if your square is flip it over and check it from the other side. If that line is still perfectly lined up with the edge of your square and perfectly lined up, then you know that that square is still square. Right, so you've seen how you can check if your square is square. But I just want to show you what it looks like if your square isn't square. So this sliding square there that I've got here, what I've done is I've just jammed, you might be able to see it, a little bit of, loosened off the screw, jammed a little bit of cotton paper in there to throw it out of square so that it's not square. And so imagine now you've got a square, it's been in your toolbox, you're trying it and it isn't square. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so I've got my piece of steel. I'm going to check my square is square. Of course, as you remember, I've made this square unsquare now. So I'm going to put my mark on first. I'm going to do it this way so that you'll be able to see the difference. I'm going to make my mark. Okay, so there's my mark. Now, again, flip it over, put it back on, and lining up with the bottom, you can clearly see that that's out. Now, this is really, really exaggerated. If your square is that far out, it's definitely time for a new square. But that shows what it looks like when you find out your square isn't square. So that's tip number 3. So I hope you enjoyed those 3 tips. Just things that I've picked up over the years that I've been an engineer. I've got one more tip for you, but before that, I just want to say thank you to everybody who subscribed to the channel. At the time of recording this, it's late September now, I've got 1,950 odd subscribers, which is absolutely incredible. I'm so pleased and so happy, and the comments have been amazing. Lots of encouragement, which I thank you so much for. You've no idea what that means. But also the tips, and people have been saying what they'd like to see on the channel and maybe things that I could do better. Sound quality, I know, and you'll notice that most of this video I've had a microphone on. Unfortunately, the battery's gone, so this last bit I've gone back to having no microphone, so I hope this is coming through okay. One comment was about the length of the videos. They should be longer and not split into part 1 and 2. So wherever possible, I'm going to make sure that that's the case. But thank you to everybody who subscribed and all your comments, and please keep them coming. I've had quite a lot of comments on welding. Am I going to do some welding videos? Well, yes, I am. I'm definitely going to do some welding videos. I'm hoping if you go into the community section of the page, there is a shout out asking for some help with that, and I'd really like to see one of you guys, or a couple of you guys, here with me in the workshop. And rather than just me doing a video of me showing some tips on how to get started in welding, that I actually do that with some of you guys and give some free tuition. So that's an offer that I've made. I hope some of you take me up on it. Not at the end of the world if you don't. I do understand that you're based all over the place, including Canada, US, Australia, which is amazing. But if anybody is close enough to where I am in Manchester, UK, it'd be wonderful if you could join me here in the workshop. So that last tip, based on welding, because I've had so many comments about welding. So I get asked this a lot in general. How do you know what amps to set your welder at? Well, if you're stick welding, which is what I'm going to cover right now, it's on the packet when you buy your welding rods. And a lot of people may have not have noticed, so I'm going to show you. So this first packet, these are stainless steel rods. And if I show you here, right there, it says amps. These are 3.2 rods. And under that it says 100 amps. So on the packet it's telling me that 100 amps is the ideal amps for these rods. I can go under that if the material's thin, go over that if the material's thicker that I'm welding, but the ideal is 100, and I can go plus or minus either side of that. Here's a packet of 6013 rods. These are your most common rods. These are 2.5s. So again, on the packet, and on the packet there, 2.5 milli rods, 60 to 110 amps. So that's telling me an amp range. So at the lower range, so maybe I'm welding some really thin stuff, 60 amps, and right the way up to 110 amps for thicker stuff. And that is the ideal amps for those rods to work at. It tells you on the packet. So don't be tempted to take your rods and put them in I've seen, welders, DIY welders, and even on welding channels where they've got pasta tubs and they've put the welding rods in the pasta tubs to keep them dry. Great idea. If you do that, make sure you rip off that label and keep them with them, so you've always got a reference to what amps to take welder at. And it's as simple as that. As you get more experience, you'll get a feel for what amps that you want. But it's written on the packet for you. So there you go, tip number 4, bonus tip. Well, thank you for joining me. I've had a lot of fun doing this video. Thank you again for all of those who have subscribed to the channel. It means a lot. It's really helping me build the channel. And thank you so much for all the comments, the kind ones and the critique, because it helps me bring you better content. So that's it. Until next week, I'll be back in the workshop. Thank you for joining me.